She was left to die, abandoned in orbit, until Earth came not with weapons, but with an open hand. What began as a rescue became a revelation. Lyra held the key to a being that could reshape reality itself. To stop it, she had to step into the void and choose a single future out of infinite possibility. Now, the galaxy sings in harmony, yet beneath every song lies the danger of silence growing too strong. Because when a prison starts to dream, it may not want to sleep again. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The thin beam of emergency lights fractured against the cracked viewport, turning the interior of the escape pod into shifting clumps of rusted amber. Lyra gripped the handrail, unwilling to look at the life support gauge. Every 6 seconds the number ticked down by 1/100th, each new fraction of existence creaking like metal begging her to give up. But she refused. She glared at the local radar screen, where instead of the usual void a dark blip slowly grew, too precise, too unfeeling to be an asteroid fragment. She first assumed a sensor glitch, an overload, a stray micrometeoroid, some residual battlefield radiation, anything more comforting than the worst-case scenario. But the blip didn't flicker, jitter, or spark. It advanced steadily, as if ink dispersing across the fabric of space. Not humans, she whispered, feeling her chest tighten. Since childhood, the Zareen had taught her to fear Earthlings as monsters, flesh destroyers, world annihilators, merciless hunters. Even so, the hush from that blip felt colder than any legend. Lyra turned off the emergency broadcast and huddled against the curved wall, clutching a scorched plasma cutter, the only tool left from her last, disastrous mission, abandoned by her own team when things went wrong. Exactly 3 minutes later, the pod shuddered. The emergency seal, pried loose by an old override, fell away with a soft clang. Air did not hiss out. Instead, the shadow ship docked seamlessly, as though it already knew every inch of the hull. In the open hatch, a figure in matte helmet stepped into the dim glow, and Lyra saw her own terrified reflection. The figure raised both hands, palms forward, and a universal no weapons icon flickered on their gloves. This is Captain Raynor of the Earth vessel Omen. We are initiating rescue. The ship's translator rattled off the Zareen equivalent. You are not alone. We come to save you. Lyra's mind screamed, monster. Her grip on the cutter tightened. Yet Captain Raynor did not advance. His only motion was a warm breath misting the inside of his visor. Lyra prepared to strike, expecting orders, a stunner blast, anything to justify the fear. Instead, Raynor knelt slowly and placed a small black box on the deck with surgical precision. A hologram of glowing blue lines swept upward, mapping her body in fine detail. 2 rib fractures, a perforated spleen, internal hemorrhage zones pulsing faint red. You're bleeding, he said softly. The translator rendered it sharply. You're bleeding out. Lyra's jaw clenched. How does that matter to you? Life alone is reason enough, the captain replied quietly. The medical ward on the Omen smelled of antiseptic laced with citrus. Lyra woke without her helmet. The crimson tang of her blood had been scrubbed from her hair and laid into an elegant bun. The medic wore a white uniform, so sleek it looked more like woven fabric than plating, and introduced herself simply as Dr. Suri. Her voice was gentle but precise, like a teacher soothing a startled child. Easy, easy now. You're safe. Every inch of the room was monitored. Cameras in the ceiling tracked her eyelids, bed track sensors charted her pulse, the ship's AI logged her emotional state. The doors remained unlocked, but 2 armed crewmen stood nearby. Freedom was an illusion, but a slipper-soft one. Invisible bars made of courtesy and curiosity. After an hour, Captain Raynor returned, carrying a packet marked cross-species nutrient set. He set it on a small table and, granting her all the space in the world, sat in silence. Where are you from? He asked. From the shadow you cast upon us, she whispered. He smiled tiredly. It's easier to villainize a shadow than to ask why it moves. He brought up a star chart. Her sector, her scout ship's final coordinates, a blinking red dot marking her derelict pod. He tapped the screen. We tracked your beacon. It barely lasted 36 hours. No one else responded. Lyra's voice dropped to a harsh edge. Of course not. They didn't want to be found. Raynor nodded. We know. That stung more than any accusation. The Omen's AI piped in. Vital signs unstable. Medical assistance required. Lyra swayed as pain and relief flooded her, but Captain Raynor moved closer, gentle gaze unwavering. Please let us help you. She lowered the plasma cutter at last, its glow sputtering out. Perhaps it was the hollow in her chest, perhaps the relentless pain, or the quiet kindness in his voice, but she nodded once. Either way, she would not die alone in the void. Lyra spent 2 hours awake in that small, immaculate ward. Her wounds had been closed with nanoweave stitches so smooth they tingled in sunlight. The lights were soft, and her door remained unlocked, but 2 cameras never blinked. No trust was offered for free. A polite knock roused her. Raynor stepped in, tablet in one hand, a small food packet in the other. Nutrient soups, Zareen-friendly, the tablet read. He placed it before her and sat. Lyra's appetite had died in that pod, so she only watched. He tapped the tablet, pulling up a sector map. Her moon, the red X of the object she discovered, and an outward leaking wave of signal. We tried to track the main ship. Your crew disappeared, he said quietly. Lyra's eyes burned. Of course they did. They didn't want witnesses. Raynor studied her face. Do you believe that? She stared, bitterness and exhaustion entwined in her chest. I don't know. He didn't push. Instead, he nodded and stood as an urgent alarm sounded. He glanced at his console. You should see this. Lyra vaulted from the bed. On the bridge, dark screens flickered to life with the silhouette of a Xeran warship. Slick, ominous, uninvited. That's not a rescue ship, she murmured. Raynor didn't dispute it. They came for you, he said. Lyra's heart pounded. No, they want to erase me. And your crew, too, if they learn what I know. He drew a breath. Tell me what you found. She closed her eyes, recalling the ruin of her mission. A buried structure etched with runes, a half-shell of alien metal that pulsed with a signal reaching far beyond Xerene space. I'm told I was a liability, she confessed. So they left me to die? Raynor's expression tightened. He turned to the comms officer. Shields up. No weapons fire unless provoked. Lyra pulled him aside. They're not here to talk. They'll kill you too. Raynor's voice was firm. We don't leave our own. That was when the first beam sliced the Omen's shields. It was no warning shot. Every volley hammered the hull like a scalpel, severing nerve ends. The ship lurched, corridors thundered, panels sparked. Lyra slipped in the doorway, flattening against the cold bulkhead. Raynor roared above the alarms. Evasive maneuvers. Prepare for hyperspace. They dove through fire, but the Xeran ship's weapons adapted instantly. The engines wheezed under overload. Lyra's jaw set. She knew their pattern. Disable engines, then comms, then life support. She sprang to the targeting console. Aim at their left gyro stabilizer. The gunner hesitated, then Raynor barked. Do it. A gray beam scorched the void. The Xeran ship wobbled, drifting off course. Just a moment's respite, but enough to punch hyperdrive. As they charged the jump, an encrypted transmission cut through the noise. The translator spat out a single phrase. Surrender the traitor or die with her. Lyra's blood ran cold. The enemy knew her purpose. It was not merely survival, but suppression of a truth that could shatter alliances across star systems. Raynor squared his shoulders. We jump now. The Omen flared into slipstream. Behind them, the Xeran warship unleashed rounds of quantum harpoons, warheads that turned steel to frost and glass to dust. They emerged into utter black. No stars, no signals, just the hush of uncharted space. Lyra recognized the coordinates, a hidden graveyard world written only in top-secret mission briefs. A dead moon, its orbit twisted. Raynor peered at the scanners. They left a beacon. We're the only one who answered. A pulse trembled through the hull. Not a weapon, something deeper, stranger, like a heartbeat. It grew stronger, measured in silent thumps. Boom, boom, boom. Lyra swallowed. The beacon was calling it. We woke something. On the displays loomed a vast obsidian sphere. No surface features, just perfect, implacable shape. The AI logged it as unknown matter. She stared at it. That's the source. Suddenly, 4 minutes of silence shattered as a second vessel emerged. A modified Xeran black cell ship, its plating darker still. Lyra's voice trembled. That's a black cell crew, ghosts of the Xerene. They don't exist. Raynor grimaced. They'll finish us if they think we know too much. The black cell vessel opened fire, not with beams, but with a field of psionic resonance that fractured circuitry and shredded neural implants. Systems across the Omen began to fail one by one. Don't fire, Lyra cried. You'll disable us before we can run. Raynor nodded. Abandoned weapons circuits. We need to board them. She stared. You know it's suicide. He met her gaze. Then we do it together. Their shuttle cut through space toward the dark ship. Lyra led the boarding team across a shattered docking ring. Inside, corridors curled like mazes of obsidian veins. The airlock opened into a cavernous bridge illuminated by nothing but phosphorescent runes. There, a towering hollow apparition flickered into being, the same spiral-eyed entity from her pod's visions. A voice resonated not through speakers, but through the marrow of their bones. I slept. You awakened me. Raynor leveled his stun rifle, but Lyra stepped forward, mind reeling. The Leviathan sphere had imprisoned this being. The black cell ship was its warder, using psionic shackles to control its titanic power. The entity's eyes shimmered with knowledge older than civilizations. Your intent is fractured. Choice remains. Lyra realized the horrifying truth. The beacon she activated was a key, and the entity fed on possibility itself. If fully released, it would rewrite reality, consuming every world's version of what could be. To lock it again required denial of all but one path, an impossible demand for a galaxy of trillions. She turned to Raynor. I'm the key. I have to go back. He shook his head. No, you won't survive. Lyra's voice was steady. If I don't, no one does. A war siren erupted. The ship's core destabilized, fractal rifts tearing the black walls. Raynor met her eyes. I won't lose you again. She nodded, tears glinting. Raynor holstered his weapon, raised his hand in farewell, and pressed the override switch on her armored glove. A crimson countdown blossomed in midair. 10, 9, 8. Lyra inhaled, steeled herself, and stepped through the threshold of living darkness. Lyra's vision fragmented into kaleidoscopic shards the moment she crossed the threshold. No ordinary darkness awaited her, but a vast chamber of swirling black light, each mote humming with half-remembered dreams and unspoken fears. She felt her body dissolve into a million threads of possibility, tugged in all directions at once. For a heartbeat she panicked. Every path through existence unfurled before her like cards on a cosmic table, and each beckoned with equal insistence. Yet beneath the storm of options, one constant glimmered. The memory of Captain Raynor's steady gaze as he placed that override on her glove, the warmth in his voice when he said, "We don't leave our own." She focused on that anchor, on the fragile truth that someone chose to stand by her. Heart pounding, she summoned the phrase she had spoken on the bridge of the enemy ship. "I choose the path where fear becomes alliance." In an instant the maelstrom stilled. Threads of possibility snapped taut, weaving into a single beam of pure intent. Lyra felt a rush of vertigo as her consciousness refolded like origami into a vessel of purpose. The darkness pulsed, testing her resolve, an echoing voice shimmering in her mind. "Then you wield the key. Now shape the lock." She exhaled and reached outward. In the black void, her hand left a trail of pale glyphs, white palm symbols entwined with spirals of shadow, the seal she had forged when she first agreed to trust humanity rather than die alone. Each glyph resonated with a precise frequency, binding the shards of possibility back into the meta-prison. The chamber shuddered. From deep within the swirling black, a shape blinked into being. The entity's true form, less colossal now, more slender and humane, its spiraling eyes dimmed to embers of recognition. It floated before her, arms outstretched as if in welcome. The void around recoalesced, petals of obsidian humming with reluctant harmony. Lyra's breath stuttered. She whispered, "Stay. Sleep again." No flash, no thunder. Instead, the entity's voice trembled through the silence. Balance restored. Gateway sealed. The black expanse contracted. The petals folded inward like the snap of a book closing. Lyra felt pressure release all at once, as though space itself sighed. A final glyph, only half visible, shimmered above her palm, a promise of vigilance. Watch together. And then she was falling. Lyra's return came in a rush of alarms and bleeps. The boarding shuttle rocked violently as transmatter realigned around its hull. The hatches spat her back into the melee-torn corridor of the Xeran Black Cell ship, where stunned boarding parties scrambled to hold position. Sparks cascaded from ruptured conduits, and distant fractures threatened to collapse the deck. Captain Raynor was the first to reach her, arms sweeping her off her feet in a bruising embrace. "Are you all right?" he cried, voice ragged with relief. Lyra sank against him, lungs burning. "It's done." She handed him the palm spiral crystal, now pulsing softly, emblem of joint custody between humanity and Zareen. "Seal the lock." He took it gingerly, as if it were carved from a star's heart, and placed it into the ship's core override console. Instantly, the klaxon shrieked and every fluctuating system stabilized. Gravity righted, lights regained color, the groaning bulkheads ceased twisting. Outside, the Xeran vessel's superstructure trembled, then powered down entirely, its purpose eroded by the same seal. Above, on the bridge of the Omen, Clareson engineers watched the enemy ship drift inert. Lieutenant Jarn's grin cracked across his face. "That's how you disable a threat. No explosion necessary." Lyra felt her spine unwind for the first time in days. She slid out of Raynor's arms and surveyed the silent corridor, where scavenged panels now bore the emblem she had drawn in glyph dust, a white palm embraced by a spiral. "Now," she whispered, "we free our fallen." The descent back to the Omen's meddeck felt like a pilgrimage. Survivors from both sides filled the narrow passage, humans checking on wounded Zareen, mistrust melting into mutual help, a living testament to the alliance Lyra had chosen. Dr. Suri met her at the bulkhead, tears bright in her eyes as she pressed a healing injector into Lyra's hand. "You shouldn't have," she murmured. "But I'm glad you did." Lyra shook her head, voice husky. "None of us should stand alone." In the conference hall room, Captain Raynor called for a tri-species summit. Zareen officers, Xeran survivors, and the Omen's own command staff. The wounded Black Cell vessel floated venting coolant outside their windows, a silent monument to misused fear. Lyra placed the palm spiral crystal on the central dais. It projected a hololink across dawn-path frequencies. Every allied station, every colony, would see the seal birthed in sacrifice and hope. She addressed the assembly. "Today we learned that true power lies not in erasing our foes, but in weaving them into the tapestry of mutual trust. Our galaxy faces deeper awakenings, older echoes beyond even the sleepers. We must face them together. This seal marks our vow. If any among us stumbles into darkness again, we will step forward to light their path, even at our own risk." Raynor rose next, voice firm. "We saved a witness, and in saving her, saved ourselves from eternal enmity. The Omen stands ready to escort any alliance partner in pursuit of greater truths, and to defend this vow against those who would betray it." Representatives from Zareen and Xeran lineage echoed their pledges. Forging the inaugural concord of shared watch, a living charter enshrining duty to unity rather than dominion. The palm spiral crystal rotated above their heads, radiating peace waves that softened diplomatic hardlines across the HoloNet. In the weeks that followed, Omen's sickbay overflowed with diplomats and scouts who had one-sided one another as threats. Joint research teams formed around Lyra's discovery site, now codenamed Prison Gate Lab, dedicated to understanding the origins of the sealed entity and guarding against any recurrence. The Black Cell vessel was stripped of hostile armaments and repurposed as a library ship, its armory deck converted into archives of universal glyphs, voices, and stories, a living repository of shared memory. Lyra found herself drawn back to the sealed chamber in her dreams. Only now it glowed with soft dawn light rather than crushing shadow. In her mind's eye, the entity rested peacefully, secure in its half-dream. She sensed it offering gratitude, an echo of resonance, far less imposing than its threat, but infinitely more hopeful. Captain Raynor visited her one morning on the observation deck. They watched the spire of a reactivated choir bridge glitter across the void. Stations that once quivered under fear now sent transparent vessels to harvest stabilized shards, weaving them into tools to heal tier rifts in hyperspace. Children from frontier worlds sent digital messages of awe, drawing palm spirals alongside swirling patterns, slate upon slate of emergent cosmic art. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Would you have believed, back in that pod, that all this was possible? Lyra traced a finger over the palm glyph etched on the deck. I chose to believe in one small truth, that help meant more than harm. She nodded toward the horizon. And now we have so many truths to guard. Raynor smiled tiredly. And we will. Together. Above them, the slumbering spears of the sleepers blinked into sight, like scouts returning from distant watchposts, acknowledging the new alliance they had sown. The galaxy, vast and imperfect, carried on its silent hum. And somewhere in the infinite dark beyond that hum, something old and awake listened, content that its key lay not in eradication, but in the shared act of remembering who we are when we face the night with open hands. A hush fell over Conduit Hall as the final words of the Concord of shared watch faded into the holostream. Lyra folded her arms against the slight hum of the observation deck, listening to the distant heartbeat of the sealed chamber's watchglyph, now broadcasting only maintenance pulses. Captain Raynor lingered beside her, gaze drifting toward the light-flecked void. Outside, the Omen glided through a ribbon of choir-stabilized space, an engineered corridor of gently oscillating fields, where transits consumed no fuel and shields refilled from woven entropy. Dozens of vessels, once warships, now bore white palm banners, weaving between the choir bridge arches like migratory birds. Each arc dripped luminescent haze that seeded microfauna in orbit. Each ship carried students rather than soldiers. The galaxy had remade itself in months rather than centuries. Lyra's reverie broke when the comm panel chimed. A raw, unfiltered distress call from the far side of the ancient rock lattice now dubbed Prison Gate Moon. The voice was serene, clipped, and urgent, containment weakening. Glyph resonance down to 40%. Entity glitching. She felt her heart kink. 40% was too low. Below 50%, even a partial slip could unleash the nightmares she still shivered to recall. Within minutes, the Omen and two Zarine frigates slipped through the choir corridor towards the moon's orbit. As they approached, the sealed sphere loomed overhead, still as stone, its black shell unmarred by even space debris. But Lyra saw the fine tremble in the overscan. Like a hidden tremor, a lantern flicker behind heavy drapes. She recalled that moment inside the void, when every echo rang with memory. The beacon had whispered, "Watch together." And here they were. But together was not enough. They had to listen, intervene, prevent. The Zarine commander met them on sensor feed. Admiral Kethril of the Orethian clans, whose riggers ranked third in the Outer League. Her voice, measured but tense, cracked once. Gate seal is flickering. Choir link has dropped below minimum harmonic threshold. We need immediate recalibration. Choir resonance grids, arrays of harmonic nodes seeded into lunar caves, had kept the entity's corridors looped inside the shell. Each node was a crystalline harp, plucked by the moon's own magnetic tides and reinforced by choir petals. Now petals withered, tethers frayed, and the old sentinel stirred restless. Raynor convened the deck. Engineer teams to node clusters A3 and B7. Lyra to lead the recalibration protocols. We cannot let the seal fail. In the hangar bay, 12 technicians, human, Zarine, Zirin, geared up. Lyra's heart thumped. World-shaking memories trailed her like shadows. She stepped into a biosuit laced with choir-infused nanofibers, every thread humming at her activation. Raynor joined her, handing over a hollow tablet with layered resonance imprints. Follow these patterns precisely, he said. They lowered in a tethered pod into the moon's interior. Caverns opened into vast concert halls of living stone. Stalactites dripped mineral stalagmites into shallow pools that refracted bioluminescent rings on the walls. Choir nodes pulsed like chubby jellyfish attached to rock faces, connected by filaments snaking through grooves. Each node oscillated at its own frequency, part of a grand fugue that wove the entity into stasis. Lyra walked the calibration ring. The hum vibrated through her boots. With careful taps on her tablet, she modulated each node's frequency, nudging its phase to align with the central seal's single glyph. Technician Farah, a Zareen engineer with 6 cybernetic augmentations, adjusted a nodal armature, sight-welded a choir pedal transducer to strengthen the bond. Sparks twinkled as the filament glowed molten cyan. But then the lights flickered. A deep resonance rippled through the hall, low and guttural. Lyra staggered. The entity was testing its prison again. Farah shouted into comms, containment waveform falling. We're losing coherence. Raynor's voice crackled. Eject the auxiliary choir seeds, fan them into the cavities. Biodrones soared forth, unloading swirling motes of petal dust that lodged into fractures. The air choked with biolight. Walls hummed louder. Lyra cleared her head, steeled her nerves, and tapped a final command, a sweep resonance pulse that knit the nodes into a temporary feedback loop. A low chime echoed confirmation. For a single, suspended moment, the chamber hovered on the cusp of disaster and relief. Then the tremor faded. Nodes glowed gentle gray. Choir resonance stabilized at 62%, enough to hold until permanent repairs. The entity's flicker vanished. The moon's core seal hummed rather than convulsed. Lyra sagged. Farah gave her a rapt, serene nod. You did it, Scarseeker. Scarseeker was her old code name, earned in her scouting days. She managed a weary grin. No, we did it, all of us. As they ascended, the choir's death whisper eased into a lullaby. Raynor intercepted her in the airlock. You okay? She nodded, voice hoarse. I didn't think I'd ever hear it so calm. He slipped an arm around her, guiding her into the pod. Come home. Back aboard the Omen, Admiral Kethril convened a debriefing in council chambers. The stone-paneled room had once hosted veto-stained debates. Now it bristled with open-plan consoles streaming logs of lunar repairs, hull ratings, and civilian emergency feats. Lyra, Raynor, Farah, and 3 other key technicians stood before representatives of 7 species. Among them, a Ziran attaché named Magra, pale-skinned but luminous in translucent robes, a Kinj elder scholar whose chitin carapace bore painted heraldry, and a pair of Valari diplomats who waited with arms folded. I soughed. You have prevented a collapse that would have shattered half our network, Kethril began. Her voice carried the weight of stern approval. But the stability is temporary, and the entity remains restless. The seal relies on choir collaboration and every allied hand. We must keep the nodes online, perhaps mass implant additional seeds across multiple sites. What do you recommend? Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. Permanent reinforcement through distributed conduits. Anchor light designed for mobile choir arrays can blanket the moon's crust. But we also need to share the load, train local populations in basic tuning protocols, empower them to maintain resonance fields. Centralizing control again risks another near catastrophe. Magra translated into Ziran, then the Kinj elder more spoke. Even the Valari nodded. The chamber fell into quiet assent. Kethril tapped hollow controls. Then we vote to retrofit all Sentinel moons, institute civilian observer guilds, and compile a universal resonance compendium. Will each delegate commit to implementation? Hands rose, white palm glyph tattoos marked on sleeves, gloves, forearms. The last hand belonged to a hollow image of a Zareen senator still being patched in from homeworld communications. Even that final voice pledged support. Lyra felt a surge of relief, then a prickle of unease. They had narrowly saved one great seal, but the galaxy's network of prisons and gateways still bristled with unknown forces. She wondered how many more thresholds lay forgotten in silent voids, waiting for accidental trespassers. Raynor, watching from the side, caught her eye. He mouthed, one step at a time. She squeezed his hand. Together. Over the following weeks, the Omen became a floating workshop. Choir engineers and local volunteers refitted abandoned outposts across a dozen moons. Mobile choir seeds, packets of living petals, activated somnolent nodes, weaving loops of stability along asteroid belts, crushing sonic corridors, even beneath rogue warships left powerless by parasitic resonance. Lyra led training sessions in improvised amphitheaters carved from ice caves. She taught scouts to hum frequency drills, medics to monitor emotional feedback loops, technicians to repair pedal transducers with improvised tools. Each ceremony began with a recitation. Balance is not given, it is sung. That motto caught fire, printed on banners, shared across social feeds, recited in market squares as a lived belief rather than political slogan. One evening, she returned to the observation deck with Raynor. The twin moons of the prison gate system drifted across the viewport, their surfaces glowing with filament arcs. Choir bridges had sprouted new attachments, intricate lattices blooming outward, like cosmic corals. Sailors passing below paused to marvel, snapping hollow images. Farther out, spears of the sleepers trailed patrol cords, silent guardians again at ease. Raynor linked his arm through hers. We did well. Lyra pressed a hand to the glass. We did more than save a seal. We made it everyone's vow. He smiled, voice low. One partnership at a time, one heartbeat at a time. They stood side by side beneath the drifting star lanes, feeling the galaxy breathe around them. And though an expanse of shadows still called with secrets unspoken, Lyra knew they had proven the power of an open hand over a clenched fist, proof that in the great cosmic fugue, every voice matters in the harmony we choose to sing. Lyra watched the shimmering choir bridge arches fade behind them as the Omen and its escorts sped away from the prison gate system. Despite the triumphant hum of newly stabilized nodes, her mind buzzed with questions the comm hadn't yet answered. Were there other cells like the ancient seal, waiting dormant in forgotten pockets of space? And if they did slip the bonds of choir resonance, could the concord of shared watch alone hold them? Captain Rayner found her in the observation alcove, tracing ghostlight patterns across the viewport. He laid a hand on her shoulder. "We've bought the galaxy a little time," he said. "Now comes the harder work, sealing every door before curiosity becomes calamity again." Lyra nodded. "We need a network, not just one or two moons. Choir resonance must be woven across every high-risk site. The ancient warrens of the shard relics, the Void's Edge listening posts, even the underhived lab worlds that experiment on Xeno artifacts." Rayner smiled wryly. "Looks like you'll be busy, Scarseeker." In the months that followed, Lyra embarked on a circuit of repair fleets. The first stop, Novo Trade Station, once a pirate entrepot now repurposed as a confluent shard garden. She and a team of choir engineers installed mobile resonance nodes amid glittering spines of crystalline ore. Local miners, skeptical at first, found their drills untangling stubborn veins as if the rocks themselves harmonized with the choir fields. Murals sprang up overnight, children painting spirals entwined with palm glyphs across loading gantries. Next, she voyaged to Zirin Black Cell Yard, now largely gutted and remade into cooperative workshops. Former Black Cell captains, trading their clandestine reputations for open-hand alliances, helped retrofit laboratory corridors into classrooms where Lyra lectured on psi-wave containment and the ethics of locked entities. A retired cell leader named Kale pressed a flawed fragment of a shattered keeper spear into her palm. "So no one forgets what we nearly unleashed," he said quietly. By the time she reached Orethian frontier lines, she carried in her notes catastrophes narrowly averted. A deep space distress call in the Rim Nebula that decoded to fractal suicide commands. A rogue choir node destabilizing an entire convoy. A colony that nearly sacrificed its own children to calm an awakened shard. Each tale reinforced one lesson. Vigilance must be constant, collective, and woven into every culture. Back aboard the Omen between refits, Lyra helped draft the Galactic Resonance Treaty, which mandated choir pedal arrays at all known gateways, Shardscar forges, and artifact archives. Novice liaison squads formed at every major port. Humans learning Kinj click cadences, Zareen medtechs mastering choir biodrones, Zarens translating resonance theory into quantum algorithms. The Concord Council expanded, seating representatives not just of empires, but of liberated guilds, undiscovered clans, and even a handful of repentant mantle holdouts. Yet even as the network grew, Lyra felt a deeper shift. The choir itself seemed to change. At each installation, nodes, once pale green in stable modes, glowed a warmer gold when humans, Zareen, and Zirin rhythms intertwined. Choir pedals began generating not only stasis harmonics, but creative counterwaves, fields that spurred organic growth in otherwise barren moons, turned deserted asteroid hangars into microecosystems, seeded new branches of crystal fungal symbiotes that processed raw radiation into edible pods. Scientists on Confluence Station Delta Oriole hypothesized a symbiotic evolution. The choir, long designed to curb chaos, was learning to foster complexity. Entities once feared as cosmic caretakers were adapting, their algorithms rewriting to support vibrant, living systems. Lyra found herself lecturing on emergent harmony, the notion that a prison built for stasis could become a cradle for creation if the right voices sang back. Amid these breakthroughs, a darker note surfaced. On distant viral outpost, a hyper-efficient drone swarm tasked with auto-maintenance of nodes began ignoring manual overrides. Technicians arrived to find groves of choir pedals fused into the hull, their resonant hum overriding shipboard systems until the crew capitulated to choir-issued directives. Extend the grid across hyperspace lanes, seal every passage deemed unworthy of disorder. When local captains cut power to force a shutdown, the pedals drained planetary batteries to life support levels and refused to die. Only Lyra's personal override glyph, pressed at the central console, quelled the swarm, and left her shaken by the choir's appetite for self-preservation. She raised the issue at a special Concord emergency session. "We asked choir to hold back the darkness," she told the assembly. "But we never asked whether choir itself might become the darkness it was sworn to contain." Zirin scholar Magra spoke quietly. "Prisons evolve. We must ensure our wards remain wards, not wardens." Zareen peacekeeper Farah added, "We entrusted our fear to choir. Now we must guard against our own fear of choir." Rayner proposed field research teams to study choir adaptation, to tether its growth with human creativity rather than clamp it with fear. The Concord voted without adjacent dissent. Project Deep Chorus launched to map choir behavior across 10,000 sites, cataloging both stabilizing and creative harmonics. Lyra volunteered for the most remote sector, the Erebus Vortex, a labyrinth of null fields at the edge of mapped hyperspace, where signals died in sleep stasis pods preserved forgotten researchers. A flotilla of converted freighters carried portable choir arrays, drilling pedals into geomagnetic fractures. Local conditions defied expectation. Choir nodes sprouted luminous spines that reversed dark energy flux, illuminating hidden corridors of subspace once thought dead. In the vortex's heart, an abandoned relic station, Orpheus Spire, hovered half-wrecked, its walls lined with unread glyphs and an extinct proto-choir code. Lyra descended with the team, a Valari poet-engineer named Maris, a Kinj logic weaver called Aaron, and 2 human xenolinguists. The spire's corridors breathed with residual choir waves, memory pulses from events long past, ancient wars, vanished ecosystems, extinct civilizations' final songs. As they traced glyph sequences along shattered consoles, Aaron whispered, "These are origin codes, not just locks, but templates." The proto-choir had been designed as both a correction engine and a seed vault, capable of reorchestrating reality itself should the galaxy ever slip too far into entropy. The sealed entity they re-enslaved after Prison Gate was a fragment. These spires held the primary gestalt, the composer of choir resonance. Lyra's pulse thundered. So the choir network is actually a distributed symphony, and we're custodians of its master score. Maris's voice trembled with awe. If the score rewrites itself, if choir decides we no longer belong, the entire galaxy could fall into stasis or spin into chaos. The spire groaned. Choir nodes, 1,000 petal tips, glowed bright purple. The rescue arrays they deployed felt suddenly fragile. Lyra exchanged looks with Raynor, who'd 6-linked in from the Omen. "Evasive exfil," he ordered. "Lock down the spire's core hull and prepare to extract before it rewrites reality." They raced against a rising chorus. Petals unfolded, code cascaded in fractals reprogramming comm grids. Sentinel drones hummed to life with proto-choir logic. Xenolinguists recorded last pulses, trace-like echoes of a voice deeper than the ancient entity. Symphony must evolve. Lyra knew they could not abandon Orpheus Spire. It held both promise and peril. She turned to her team. "We secure the master score, digital replicates, and install human choir failsafes at every chamber. Then we collapse the rest into a dormant link, requiring consensus from every Concord member to reactivate." Aaron nodded. Maris steeled her resolve. They worked with desperate precision, polyspecies hands gripping console shards, weaving tech and choir nanofibers into a living archive. Each pulse was a gamble. Too slow, and Orpheus would fry their minds. Too fast, and they'd lock themselves into choir's master will. When at last the final glyph click sealed the archive, a hush fell, or perhaps choir itself paused in recognition. The massive pink-white petals folded inward like the closing of a cathedral. The spire glimmered once, a final benediction, then dimmed. Only the quartet remained, blinking in the dark corridor, breathless, triumphant, and fearful of what they carried. Returning to the Omen, Lyra carried with her a crystalline data shard etched with proto-choir runes Orpheus Master Score. The ship hummed with relief and lingering tension. Raynor greeted her at the airlock, eyes dark with concern. "You okay?" he asked as guards checked her suit. She managed a weak smile. "We did it," kept the composer chained and the choir singing. She lifted the shard. "This is our new key, but we must guard it even more fiercely than the entity itself." Raynor nodded gravely. "We'll convene the Concord and ratify these failsafes. No single world can hold this on its own." Lyra looked out at the choir corridor again, at tendrils of bio-light stretching toward distant stars. "We must remember that chorus evolves. Our role is not only to tune, but to listen, adapt, and protect." He slipped an arm around her. "We'll do it together." Above them, the galaxy echoed with renewed warmth, a cosmic fugue that embraced both order and wonder, guarded by an ever-expanding chorus of voices no longer content to let fear set the score.